Hello, friends. I'm Kelly Francis, and in all honesty, I have struggled with writing this intro. How do I deliver the weight and importance of the topic at hand in a way that's new and different? Or if not being able to deliver that task, how do I tell you what you have probably already had millions of conversations about at home, in bars, or with friends? The U.S. men's national team did not go to the 2018 World Cup. This is not news. The U.S. Soccer Federation has had and continues to have controversial and rather, in my own opinion, antiquated hires, fires, and above all, excuses. This is not news. If you search American soccer today on Google or browse the vast hashtags and ats for the U.S. men's national team on Twitter and Instagram, it becomes pretty apparent pretty quickly that there's a massive problem. A problem that didn't begin at the loss of the U.S. men's national team qualifying, but rather a whole systematic issue. In this interview, Curtis Jenkins, a good friend and president of Footie Mob, an Atlanta United supporter group, joins me to discuss what we deemed, leading into the podcast, the problem with American soccer. As you could guess, we hit on a lot of broad issues, yet we kept coming back to this word and describing the whole of the topic. Complacency. Complacency, derived from compliance, defined as the act of conforming, acquiescing, or yielding. American soccer is complacent. This being MLS's 25th anniversary, the matter is even more so highlighted because it will become a year of reflection, a year of conversation and growth, and a year in looking forward for American soccer. But maybe we should also be looking at its comparisons, more particularly the growth of the NBA. And that, while drinking boozy smoothies from one of our favorite burger joints in Atlanta, is where Curtis and I start the conversation. Hello, Curtis. How are you?
Bonjour.
Bonjour. Is this from all your recent travels abroad?
Oui.
So for everybody listening, I obviously told you in the intro, but I am speaking today with Curtis Jenkins. He is the president of Footie Mob in our glorious Atlanta United supporter culture. Is a good friend of mine. He's wearing the absolutely breathtaking Footie Mob jersey, which has got it was almost like a Hawaiian print on the sleeves and in the back. It's so beautiful, and I've wanted one for the longest time, and you told me I can't have one now.
I did tell you that, didn't I? But I look fantastic in pastel and florals. So.
You really do. I mean, you walked in, just took everyone's breath away. They all went,
3 people actually left the restaurant without their food because they need to go home and change. They were not dressed up enough to be here.
No. So you and me right now, we're sitting at Grindhouse Burgers in Atlanta, and we have started sipping on one of their boozy shakes, the salted caramel one. It's absolutely delicious. Have you had enough of the smoothie to start talking? Because we're about to get in real deep with U.S. soccer. You need booze for it.
I have had plenty of booze and sugar, so I'm like a coked up 3-year-old.
Coked up 3-year-old. Wow.
Ready to do this.
All right. Well, let's just go straight into it.
Yeah.
So I know that one of the topics that you really specifically wanted to hammer in was this idea of MLS, and especially now that we're coming up on the 25th year of MLS, the growth rate, right? So you've compared it to the NBA and when they started, and they're coming in to 73 years now. Speak a little bit on this, because I know that you definitely want to go in depth on this, but how do you see MLS and their growth as in 25 years this year as to where you saw NBA and their growth?
For most of their history, the NBA wasn't the NBA we know now. The Hawks started out as the Tri-Cities Hawks back in Fort Wayne, Indiana, or somewhere thereabouts. They've moved 4 times. The Lakers moved. Celtics that we know are not the original Boston Celtics. There's somebody else. There was always this idea of we can do better than this, sometimes out of necessity, other times due to just cultural factors. I mean, people did not love watching the NBA. It wasn't the first league to integrate. I think it was the second. And when they did so, people did not take kindly to it. And you still see some of those threads today with just show up and play basketball kind of thing. But it used to be tape delayed. It was only available on local TV. It wasn't until you get Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, who happened to come in 1983 at the same time, or 1979 at the same time, then you start getting Charles Barkley. You get Michael Jordan, obviously. You get Hakeem Olajuwon.
Right, you get the greats.
You start getting not just greats, but you get stars. You get marketable stars. And not only that, you have a television ecosystem that is ready to market them. I mean, Dr. J was an all-time great. We don't really know that much about him outside of what we are told or what little footage there is. We know everything about Michael Jordan because we have the UNC footage. We have the Chicago Bulls footage.
So okay. It's not that I want to stand on American soccer side, but just for barrier of our conversation, I'm going to sort of ask questions about soccer in a way where it's going to contest a little bit of what you're saying. So I know that you've had this conversation about how stars have come in. Yeah. MLS has had those stars as well. I mean, it's geared in a different context because obviously soccer is a world sport, right? Yeah. So you've already had your Rooneys, your Beckhams, you've had these stars via Zlatan. I mean, I could keep going. Right. And they've come to MLS, as we all know, in the quote-unquote retirement league level. Does that not compare, though, with the way that you're speaking? I mean, obviously, the stars that we're thinking of with NBA were rooted in American culture, right? They were from America. So do you see that then as a negative that the stars that we qualify as the stars of the game here, the larger ones, I mean, we can obviously talk about Clint Dempsey, who came back to MLS, right? You've got Wondolowski, who's still here. You've got DeMarcus Beasley. I mean, you've got the players that are stars like that. But when we're talking about worldwide name for American players, there's not really that comparison for MLS right now, correct?
Correct. And I think some of that's due to, if Clint Dempsey and DeMarcus Beasley are starting their careers now in this current media ecosystem and then they go to Europe, same thing for Carlos Bocanegra. It would have been different because now we can all get up, roll over in our beds, and watch European soccer. Right. I mean, with ESPN Plus, with NBC Sports package. There's capability of seeing it. And we didn't really have that before. All we had was, if you knew who they were, you knew they existed, you knew they got sold off to European teams, great. Could you watch them? Maybe. But now you have a much more robust pop culture and media ecosystem where you can follow the player all the way along. Right. I mean, look at Miguel Almiron. Not even American, but he played at Atlanta United for 2 years. He won a trophy for us, and he's now in Newcastle. It's not a top 4 team. It's not a top 10 team, but it still has a following of a dedicated fan base that goes, that's our guy. He's now here, and I can still watch him.
Right. It's the same with how New York Red Bulls can do that now for Tyler Adams. Right. They can watch his games. It's the same that you can do with the Vancouver Whitecaps when you're watching Alphonso Davies. Right. That there is the growth in that. And in a way, when we look at NBA, we should look at NBA as a whole, right? So with MLS, we should do the same respective. So if we're looking at these stars that started in MLS and now have moved on, then we are looking at players like Alphonso Davies that's playing for Bayern now. I mean, Pulisic didn't start in MLS, so that's a different route, which we will get into later. There was something that you hit on, though, when you were speaking about the NBA in comparison with MLS, with these ideas that these teams, when it wasn't working, they moved. So there was this continual pursuit to get better as a league. Would you not then compare that to when MLS decided to fold the Chivas USA?
I mean, you can compare that. You can compare when they moved the first San Jose Earthquakes or the Clash to Houston. I mean, there's a lot of when they contracted the 2 Florida teams. So they did things, but then you still look at where we are 20 plus years on.
Right. And there are still some teams that they should deal with. I mean, there's the stalwarts. There's the Chicagos.
There's Philadelphia. I mean, Philadelphia is MLS 1.0 rich. If it was still 2007, great. It's not. Like, the league outgrew the owner. And that's going to happen. That should happen. Right. But if you look at other leagues where that's happened, the owners have been wealthy enough, or the TV deal has been wealthy enough where he didn't have to dip into his money to do those things. It was, I've got the TV money. I mean, the Lakers are still owned by the Buss family, not a corporation like the Braves are, for instance. You've got people who have the money to invest in MLS, And then you've got people who have the money and don't want to. You had Ziggy Wolf, who wanted in with Minneapolis, with the Minnesota team,
right.
ends up becoming a minority investor in Nashville. They're from Philadelphia. The Wilf brothers are from Philadelphia. I kind of keep going, there's your answer.
Right.
That's how you solve that
right.
problem. Here you have people with the pedigree of owning the Minnesota Vikings and have the money and definitely can help that team out.
Right. Invest and profit from.
Exactly.
Right. Which is something that we're not seeing. I mean, we are seeing growing, though. I mean, obviously with the emergence of Charlotte and with the emergence of teams like Miami, where you've got, you know, these majority stakes. I mean, LAFC as well. Yeah. You've got a massive pool of owners who are all investing in some ways. But this idea of complacency with old owners who are not contributing more to the teams and as they're stalling the growth of a club goes into a lot of conversations that you and I will probably get into tonight. Is this idea that American soccer at the moment is complacent.
Oh, it's extremely complacent. And it's not just that you have old owners who are stagnating. And I know there's the entire pro-rel wing of soccer fandom that's like...
Yeah, we don't even need to get into that because that's a whole sub.
That's not really the solution to the problem when you still have a capital problem. You don't have people who have the... Well, let's put it this way. People who have the resources are not willing to invest those resources in these leagues. We still have USL teams going under. We still have MLS teams where, yeah, they have the money to run the team, but you don't see a marketing effort. You don't see a community effort. You see the bare minimum being done to maintain a team in a professional league.
Then what would you say to teams who have these complacent owners, like the New England Patriots, who is now giving money into the team, right? We're now seeing the football lines that we've had to deal with go away. We're seeing, you know, the new training facilities. We're seeing these quote-unquote complacent owners now reaching back into their pocket.
Right.
But do you see that as a development at all? I mean, if we're still comparing this in the terms of the NBA and MLS, which is a very honorable comparison. I mean, many people have said this, that the NBA and MLS are very, very similar. Yeah. But in the growth of the way the NBA is and the trajectory as to where they are now, do you see this idea of complacent owners reaching back into the pocket as a progression? It's
a progression, but do we have enough of them doing that? I mean, you basically have those owners.
Technically, no, if we're looking at, like, Chicago Fire.
But you also have the 3-year plan teams. So you have Minnesota, which said, give us a couple years till we get our stadium. As soon as they do, guess what? They're in the playoffs.
Right.
And I think on one level as a customer, you want to know, like, hey, here I've got my team. Here's what I'm in for. But then you have the Atlanta, the
Can
LAFC.
I have a side note with that, though? Because I do have a question with this idea that if, obviously us as fans, we're spoiled in Atlanta. I mean, there's no way around it. Exactly. We really are. But if we're a fan of a club and they enter into MLS and the first thing that we hear from the marketing is, hey, give us 3 years, how is that going to sit for you? Does that mean that you now know what your expectation is and you're okay with that? Do you then become complacent because you understand that, hey, I'm giving them 3 years? Or do you then say every year after that, you've got to get better and better? Obviously, if we're using Minnesota United as an example, they said, give us 3 years.
Yeah, it was 3 years. And
then they got there. But should the fans have been complacent then for those 3 years if that's the way they're entering?
I think that's where the other money comes into play. I mean, you know what's not subject to the salary cap? Marketing. You know what's not subject to the salary cap? Fan engagement. We know what's not subject to the salary cap? In-stadium experience. All those things are completely like, hey, give us a little bit on the field. Because, I mean, a lot of these teams that have the 3-year plan, they're not playing in their own stadium. That I think they're paying $1 million or some stupid high amount per game for Minnesota to play in the University of Minnesota Stadium. That is money that, you know what, they cannot put on the field. There is a limit. There is a finite amount of money to do that. I know the United paid how much for us to play at Georgia Tech for half the season?
I don't know, but it was a lot of money.
It was a lot of money.
Because they had to retrofit it and security and
we're playing on a college campus in the middle of the city.
Right.
And who knows how much we pay KSU to play there. So there are these things.
It is drastically less. So, I know that.
So if you're a fan and you say, like, fans in 2020 are way too savvy to go, they're not spending. If you
Right.
see it being spent on, we got to pay rent here. We have no operating income from the stadium. So other than ticket sales, they're not getting anything. We're all smart enough to understand that. But to contrast Minnesota with Orlando, where you literally had the same coach and the same premise, it was give us 3 years and they keep firing the coach. You have to have a level of stability. There, the fans absolutely have a right to just be like, yo, you promised me this. I don't see progress on the field. I don't have an experience in the stadium. I don't have an experience traveling. There's no point at which you are engaging me as a fan, as a resident of the greater Orlando area, to continue to do this.
But then let's have this discussion. Let's relate it back, because, I mean, we're going with this overall arc of this being MLS's 25th year, and how as a league where it sits in the trajectory of, a really well done and the profitability of the NBA, right? If you had a team like Orlando that existed in the NBA when it was starting, because we are very much in our infancy in MLS, but if you had a team like Orlando in the infancy of the NBA, would they have already moved by now?
Oh. No, it wouldn't have moved by now, but I mean, I don't think the Vancouver Grizzlies got much longer than the Orlando City has been around right now. I mean, they were grand opening, grand closing, and it's a little weird to remember that there was a team in Vancouver. I mean, they moved the Sonics, who were doing well in Seattle, because they just wanted a new stadium, and Seattle wouldn't give them one. So no league has ever been afraid to go, no, we're gonna change that. I don't think it's going to happen there, nor should it. But I do think you start doing things as a league to minimize your losses, and I think you do things to figure out what it's going to take to make that market work.
Then do we see MLS doing that with clubs that are showing as a loss? I mean, have we seen them start doing that? I mean, there are little things, obviously, that have been done, right, with New England.
Well, why are you showing a loss? Are you showing a loss because it's a complete and total failure on every level? Are you paying players too much? How are you? If you're like, take Toronto, they have one of the highest wage bills in the league. If they're losing money, it's probably due to on-field salary. If you take, let's say, San Jose, and they're losing money, okay, you own your stadium, you don't have big-name players. Is it investment? Is it, like, where are you losing the money? It kind of determines that answer. In Orlando, I think you have a completely set of different circumstances where you may need to have some sort of, like, MLS marketing, sales, drop squad come in and go, what are you doing? Because whatever you're doing, it's not working. Let's start from scratch, rebrand, start over. I mean, New England Revs, that just seemed like Bob Kraft didn't know he had a team until the last 16 months.
2 years ago. Yeah.
He's like, because Arthur Blank wins something, he goes, Arthur, you won what? In the what? You played my team? I have a team? Huh. And now now he's like, oh, let me go rummage through the couch cushions. Here's $35 million. And here, have a Tom Brady
Those are some really deep
jersey.
Couches.
Oh, and they're huge couches. Yeah, he doesn't shop at Rooms to Go.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. Those are custom leather, deep set couches
with the money seams, so you can just pull out money as you need it.
Oh, for sure.
And then other teams have the coupon couch, where if you buy a pizza, you get one free. Comes out of their couch.
Right. Those would be the Orlando couches.
Only on Tuesdays, though.
Only on Tuesdays, though.
Yeah.
So in the trajectory, then, of MLS, if we're still looking at this timeline, we've talked about complacency of teams and how that is progressing. That we show some teams that are progressing forward and other teams which are still at a stalwart.
Yeah.
If we're looking at MLS 73 years, like NBA is now, how do you see it faring? I mean, there's obviously a lot in between there, right? So we've got the 2026 World Cup, which is happening in America with Mexico and Canada as well. Yeah. So then we have the ability at that moment in 2026 to really capitalize on the movement of soccer. As we can see now in 2020 and the 25th year of MLS, just within the past 3 years, with Atlanta United's inception, with LAFC, with there being more of a national broadcast going on with games for Major League Soccer, I feel like the success rate is faster than the NBA, is it not? And so that means the trajectory then would be vastly different
than the NBA at their 73rd year.
I mean, the success rate should be faster, but with an upper limit. Like, the NBA is literally the best basketball league on the face of the planet. MLS is not that. It won't be that. Maybe in 250 years, when we are, like, our brains are in jars and we're having this podcast again as a retrospective, we consider, like, wow, MLS is really the biggest. Like, remember when we used to get up to watch EPL and Bundesliga? Now we just go to Mercedes-Benz Stadium 12, and the entire stadium is retractable. It just comes up out of the ground like a volcano, and then goes back and it's apart the rest of the time.
Exactly.
You can have that conversation then, but we are not that league where we have the best players. What we can do is say, we have stars. We're going to market those stars not just to a community, but to every community in the city in which they live. And the ones that are truly big, your Carlos Velas, your Miguel Almirons, your Joseph Martinez's, your Bradley Wright Phillips if it's, 2015.
And not even that, but I think what's one of the good ideas about this with making stars in MLS, because that I think is the biggest thing we can do for MLS now is to take unknowns like a Miguel, Joseph wasn't really unknown. I mean, none of these were technically truly unknowns, but it's that idea of taking a name in a league in Paraguay or a league in Argentina and bringing them to the MLS, giving them a little bit of more of a national coverage, and then them making that move to the Premier League, which we all know is the desire of all players.
Every company, every entity, every business in America is in one business, telling a story. And what story is MLS telling? I don't think they know, because if they knew what story they were telling, they could tell it better.
MLS is in its 25th year, and you don't think they know what story they're telling?
No, I don't think they do. Because if they did, they would be better about how they marketed said story. Like, if you believe in your product, you don't go, you've got me. You had me from the day they announced the team. How do you get somebody who doesn't know you exist? Someone who grew up playing football every weekend, they played in high school, they go to college, they got a family, they haven't thought about soccer. How do you get them? And if you have to tell them that story of, like, this is what we do, this is how we do it, and this is how it's different in your city as opposed. That's our greatest strength as a league is, look, you come to the Gulch, it's different from if you go to LAFC's pregame. The NBA is shockingly homogenous. The NFL is horrendously homogenous no matter where you go in the league. The strength of MLS as a league is in the fact that it's different stories.
It's their individuality.
It's their individuality, and that gives you 30 stories to tell. And when it's coming to town, like, take Atlanta. I mean, my favorite saying in sports and boxing is styles make fights. You need to explain, like, oh, Atlanta's coming. They play this kind of style. We play this. This is going to be a good game because these styles match up. Instead, you don't ever know if when you go to another city, there's even a cognizance that the game is happening. When I flew to Montreal for the away game last year, I go to security. I'm wearing an Atlanta United jersey. What are you here for? A soccer game. Who's playing? Atlanta and Montreal. Oh, and what? A soccer game. You go to the bar.
I mean, I don't mean to laugh. In the individuality, you also have the specificity of knowledge. And this goes back to this marketing thing, which you said, and it was a very, very strong point that you made, that marketing is not limited by a salary cap.
Yeah.
So it's the team's ability to market in their region, and some cities don't market well. I mean, you have cities that deal with strong markets for NBA, for hockey, for the NFL. But that, if we're looking at it that way, then Atlanta shouldn't be as big as it is.
No.
Correct? Because if in this argument that I'm having with myself, that I'm trying to explain, is that with this idea of marketing and this idea of individuality, so telling your individual story as a club, wherever you are in the MLS, I just called it the MLS. Yeah. Sorry, everybody. In MLS, is that you need to be able to competitively, and this is with money, but competitively market against those other major leagues. Correct?
You're not marketing against the league. That's foolhardy, because you are not beating the being the NBA, Major League Baseball, or NFL for market. You can't.
You can't beat them, but you should still be able to be a speck on their radar.
But you're not trying to be on their radar. What you're trying to do is get. I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
You're trying to get on the average citizen's Like, here's your discretionary budget for 2020. You've got a couple games that you can go to. We want to be one of your games you go to.
Right.
Here's how how do we get on their radar? You figure it out basically.
How do you exist within your community to let the people in your community know that you exist?
Yeah. And how do you do it in a way in which is authentic? Because, like Darren always says in interviews, he pub crawled his way for Atlanta United to success. Maybe that's what you do in Brooklyn, too. Maybe that's what you do in Montreal. And L.A., that's not what you do.
No.
In Seattle, that's not what you do. You have to figure out what that looks like for each individual city and then build on that. You have to just be out there. Like, the fact that Darren still comes to the Gulch every single game and walks to the supporters tailgate is wild, because in my 40 years of life, I've never seen any high-ranking official ever just walk through
a fan center. Yeah,
I've seen them walk around the stadium very quickly, but to go, I'm going into the belly of the beast, where you could literally be held accountable on a minutely basis. And he does it. He doesn't just come in and shortcut it. He walks all the way in, all the way out. People take pictures with, and people appreciate there's a face, a name, a voice. That is.
I'm not sure how many presidents in MLS do that, actually.
I'm not sure how many in sports do that.
That's true.
Like, I know what Travis Schlenk looks like from the Hawks from pictures. I know what Tony Wrestler looks like. I know his wife is Jamie Gertz. But after that, are you going to see them out in the crowd going, hey, how is this going? Are you having a good time? What works for you? What doesn't? And there has to be, especially with American soccer, a certain level of being humble and saying, you know what? We aren't top of the heap. Hey, customers. Hey, supporters. What are we doing wrong? What are we doing right? And you build on those things.
So back to this idea that MLS doesn't know what story it's telling. Can that also be then, I mean, obviously we should hold the whole of MLS accountable that the league itself doesn't know what story it's telling. But then are there also moments where we can pinpoint different cities and saying, you are representing the city, maybe you should learn a little bit more about it? I mean, that's hard. Yeah. That's hard for me to say that, because, I mean, there's obviously, they've done their homework and they're obviously doing what they're doing and they are getting butts and seats. It's not like one particular league or club has nobody there, right? Yeah. So each market has its own thing. And we also can talk about the idea of population. Yeah. Some cities just aren't as large as New York, LA, Atlanta, Seattle, Portland. Yeah. Then how do they, in their own markets, make themselves exist more?
I think you have to. The thing I always tell everybody about Atlanta United is that the team made it so you had to take them seriously. They didn't cheap out on anything. If you said something about the team in 2016 or 2015, Darren was knocking on your door going, hi, I heard you said this about Atlanta United. It was that accessibility. If you're in New York, it's actually harder because, you have 8 million people, but you also have 8 other professional teams at minimum, plus the colleges, plus the fact that there's everything you could possibly want to do available in New York. The fact that you could decide, I want to go to Europe this weekend for $250 is an actual concern in New York. But assume you got 1% of that population to pay attention to Red Bulls and NYCFC. That would sell out those stadiums. And you have to go, I'm looking to dance with those who want to dance with me and take a chance with me. And that's where we're lost, is don't worry about the Giants fan, the Jets fan, the Rangers fan, the Islanders fan. If they want to come,
just be you.
No, just like.
I mean, I know that that's a very cliche thing, but I mean, is that the fundamental that we're getting at right now?
Yeah, it's, you have to. You can't, because if you get rabbit ears and worry about what somebody else is doing, you're going to fake what they're doing and do it worse than they're doing it. I can't be as good at Kelly as Kelly, so I can't do.
I can't be as good at Kelly as I don't even know what I'm doing.
Right, but you have more of an idea than I do of what you're doing.
That's true.
So if I
you have more of an idea of what you're doing than I know what you're doing.
So if I said, hey, tomorrow I'm going to start a podcast just like Kelly did, guess what? I'm going to suck at it, because you know what you're doing. Even if it's 5 seconds of information more than I have, it's still 5 seconds more of information than I have. So my only thing is like, all right, I'm Curtis. I'm going to do this. If people like it, great. If they don't, that's fine too. If I'm doing it wrong, I don't know. If I'm really doing it wrong, I'll change course. But if I'm horrifically wrong, maybe I shouldn't be doing it. And that's where I think American soccer, TM, big overarching thing has to get better. It's just going, you know what? We're going to do what we do best. And I don't know if American soccer large umbrella idea, TM, knows what it does best. Our kits are trash. The men's national team is a raging dumpster fire. The women's team are saints, and we don't deserve them.
We don't.
Yeah.
We do not deserve them.
I'm just waiting for them all to just wake up tomorrow and go, you know what? Tomorrow, we're unzipping our Americanness. We're Spanish now. Ole, we're out. They could do that, and you go, I just want what's best for you. Go fly.
You do you, boo-boo.
Yeah. Go get paid, girl. Get paid.
This is a great segue because I wanted to figure out how we can start transitioning into American soccer overall, and you just sort of put it on this platter. So one of the things that I kind of got with what you were I got what you were saying, so I don't want to say kind of got, but was this idea of understanding what you're good at and also accepting when you're wrong and when things need to change.
Yeah.
Which I don't think is something that the Federation has done yet.
No. I don't know if there's anyone in the Federation who, if the Federation went away tomorrow, would be broken up about it. They just hired Anthony Hudson, the old Rapids coach, for the men's U20 coach. The man who ran out 6 defenders against Atlanta United and still gave up a goal. That's the man who blamed everybody in Colorado, including some of the wildlife, for not competing. That's who you were putting in charge of the babies? No. I have never in my life seen more people fail upwards in my life. I wish for that kind of failure. It's like, oh, why? I sucked at my job. Guess what? Here's a promotion.
Thank you so much.
How do I get this life?
You just have to be part of the USSF any way possible, and we'll just be there for you all the time.
I was not born wealthy enough to not need a paycheck, so I'm afraid I can't work there.
But this goes to what we were talking about before I pressed record, right?
Yeah.
You said something was so brilliant, and I don't know why I myself didn't think of this, but literally every move the U.S. Soccer Federation has done has been with safety nets.
Yeah. Everybody has a safety net. Everybody has money. Everybody has another job. Everybody has a whole, there's nobody there who, if it went away, it would be like, oh, damn, I'm not eating tonight.
Right. Who's paying my bills?
Yeah. There's nobody looking at that.
Where's the roof over my head?
There's no one thinking, I'm about to go back to that ramen. God, I hope they still sell the beef flavor. Or is that more expensive now? Only people who are saying that are the players, and especially the women players. They're the ones who are suffering. Meanwhile, they're not. The people who are making decisions are still making out like gangbusters.
As far as the women's side, they're still justifying the means of not equally paying them, which is absurd at this point. It's absolutely absurd.
I mean, and that's for the women's national team players. If you're just a rank and file NWSL player, I feel horrible for you.
Oh my God.
That should be illegal to pay that wage and require those things. And then just go, you'll figure it out. At no point in my life did I ever think I would look at a professional athlete and go, I make more money than you? I have more career stability than you? I wouldn't say that shouldn't be possible, but I want to say that it's completely unfair of what we ask of women athletes in this country, be it NWSL, WNBA, anywhere, in order to succeed when we would never in 1,000 years ask the men to do that.
And this is the problem when it comes to this with the NWSL is that other leagues around the world are growing in that regard. They're paying their women more. They're being treated better. And then you're seeing stars like Sam Kerr leave when that was the real draw to that league. So you're seeing firsthand the lack of caring, the overall complacency. I keep coming back to that word because it's such a strong word when speaking about American soccer. It's the complacency of not wanting to invest more. And obviously NWSL is growing, and there have been small moves and changes to make that league better, but you're still losing out on those players.
Not only are you losing out on those players, you're losing out on the next generation of players, because for every athlete who leaves the NWSL to go play in another country, be it Mexico, be it Europe, Spain, I know has a league. There's a women's Premier League now.
Australia
has one. Every girl who doesn't see those women playing, they go, this isn't a viable outcome for me career-wise.
Your stars are leaving. Why would I play here?
Or they don't know the stars exist. So why would I play at all?
That's true.
They don't know. I mean, why does anybody want to be anything? They see somebody who's an adult making money at it. If you don't see it as a legitimate income source in the future, why would you, as a I mean, you play as a 7-year-old because your parents make you do something active. Why do you play at 14, 15? Why do you play at 16, 17? Because at that point, there are actual stakes at play. You have to decide colleges. You have to decide what you're going to do with your life on a very macro level. And if playing professionally isn't it, guess what? That woman is going to stop playing that sport and go into marketing, go into science, go into something else. And not to say that there's a space for everybody to play because there's only a certain number of roster spots, but there should be at least a wherewithal to go. There is a place here if you're one of the best of the best. If you are good enough, we have a space for you, and you can make a living doing it. Not.
Let's talk about that idea overall, though. And this goes for both men and women. If they're the best of the best, are they the best of the best? Or have players ahead of them who could have been even better not been able to make it because they can't afford to get there?
So before we started, I was telling you about a coworker whose son played his first year of rec soccer. He turns out he's pretty good at it. I mean, he's been playing sports his entire life, so he has, the basic sports mechanics down and has good balance and is having fun doing it. Into the first season, someone comes there and says, hey, for a couple $1,000s, you can enroll him in our soccer.
Our travel league.
Our travel league.
Yeah.
That is the most heinous and quite frankly offensive thing I've ever seen and heard in my life. And that this kid just did this for fun and had fun doing it. And now you're trying to commoditize this child's youth into like, hey, parent, he looks good. He could go some places if you pay me now.
Right. If you have the talent, if you have the drive, it shouldn't cost an arm and a leg and then an eyeball and an ear to move forward in this career.
Right. I think, and that's the thing where, oddly, people always say, oh, well, if we had pro-rel, if we had an open system, that would solve this because people would, if you had a good player, they would be blah, 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 yada, yada, money flows down. I don't think that's it. I think that we have people who don't have the resources to really be in the game. Like, where does the money from youth soccer go? Right. Where does it actually, like, I know for a fact there are youth coaches, like coaching, are pulling down 6 figures. I would love to make 6 figures coaching kids. And this has been pre-Atlanta United. Where do these kids end up? Do they end up in college with a scholarship? Is that just if you're a parent and you pay X amount a year for this travel team and they get a scholarship to a good school, did that money equal out, or are you better off just putting that money in a high-yield banking account going, he's just going to play for fun? We're asking, in this case, the consumer to invest in themselves for the benefit of a third party in the hopes that something is going to pay off later on, the high end being a professional contract, which, once again, in the United States, not that high, or maybe pays off in college. Those are literally the 2 best possible outcomes, and they're horrible choices. Why would you put any parent in? And parents are like, yes, cut the check today.
As a parent, and I'm not one, but I'm saying as a parent, you do allow yourself the idea that you are going to have to pay money at some point if they want to be in an athletic sport. I mean, there's money that comes along with any sport that you do, whether it be swimming, softball, soccer, baseball, whatever. There's going to be money involved, equipment, team fees. The problem with soccer is that the expense is so high that it turns other parents off. I mean, I played softball, I think a season, which was maybe fall, spring. Those were my seasons. Yeah. Was like maybe $200 for the season. And that came with the jerseys and then renting the fields. And then those coaches volunteered with leagues or clubs. You can't have that. You have to pay the coach. But there's still no point that a coach for youth should be getting paid 6 figures.
Right. I'm okay with them making 6 figures if there is a comparable, back end, if that investment pays off. Like, let's say you're the club that developed DeAndre Yedlin, and they are suing right now to get solidarity payments. I'm more than okay with the coach who developed somebody who's playing in the Premier League going, hey, I developed one, pay me, get paid. I have no problems with that. But when it's just anybody with a foreign accent who's like, I played soccer in England, Germany, Brazil, Mexico, come to my soccer camp and pay me a lot of money, that's when you start going, It's
selling a dream.
On one level, I'm like, if you get it, you earned it. But on the other hand, I'm like, isn't this somewhat fraud on some level? I mean, it's not exactly a multi-level marketing scheme, but it's not far off. It's like a weird inverted pyramid.
It's not to say that if the kid went, though, they still wouldn't develop in any way, because they still could.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely get better, but at what point is the investment of that getting better worth what the parent guardian is paying?
Especially if it's somebody that's in a low-income family.
Right.
And then at that point in time, do you just, as U.S. soccer and development of girls' youth, boys' youth, say to yourself, well, if it's a low-income player, even though they are the next Messi, I'm sorry, you can't move forward.
Money has a way of falling out of the sky when it needs to.
Right,
like Josie Altidore.
But there's still and I agree with you. Yes, great example. But there's still so many places in America that the underprivileged youth don't have the ability to go further.
Your permit starts 3 steps ahead. Yes, let's start with so many underprivileged places don't know that soccer exists.
That's also very true.
If they do know it exists,
I did start 3 steps ahead. You're absolutely right.
If they do know it's there, okay, where are they going to play, and do they have the equipment to play? Even if I'm just saying, just a ball to kick around. And 3, we have a horrific problem in America of not letting kids just have fun. Then you work on like, all right, we've got a bunch of kids who are having fun. They love this game. They're good. How do we get them into a more structured system? How do we harness that actual raw love and talent and that creativity into our next generation of players? Instead, we're like, you're good, learn to do these drills, soccer player. And that's not exactly how it works.
Okay, this brings me into a point and a conversation I wanted to have with you. The homegrowns, and just how this year, it was 2019, correct? Where the homegrowns, we now get 100% of the fee from?
Yeah, I think you get 100%. Yeah.
So that just came into being now, but it wasn't there prior. So there was something that you said when we were discussing this before, and you said it's almost like if we do find that player, right? Yeah. If we do find that Josie Altidore, Tyler Adams, we find that Christian Pulisic, or, I mean, I'm obviously naming all American players right now because that's what's specific to us. We have a problem with hoarding. There's this feel and there's this idea that they should stay here and develop here, but in reality, the best thing for them is to go to Europe. If they're at that level and at that caliber and have the ability to go prior to 18, we should be letting them go. But you went on this, and this is where I'm just like sort of setting you up to like let you fly. But this idea of hoarding players.
Yeah, I mean, the problem exists because the mechanisms are literally not there to handle that. The mechanisms for MLS when you sell a player is the league gets a cut, you get back, X amount for what you've paid. Then you get $750,000 in TAM, and then the rest is just money that you can't use. Like, here's pot of money that you cannot use directly on the first team. It disincentivizes that process. Part of it, I think, is no one knew what would happen if you sold. Let's say Christian Pulisic had signed with an MLS team, didn't have a Croatian passport, and therefore couldn't go to Europe. He turns 18, he's ready to go. He would literally have to force his way out because they'd be like, well, no, if you go, who is our draw? What are we going to do? Like, how are we going to make money? I think to use a non-American player, look at Miggy. Like, he's gone. We still follow him. I'm pretty sure there are people still getting Almiron on the back of their kits in jerseys he never wore just because he's a beloved player. Because the player is gone from your team doesn't mean he's gone from your community. And American soccer has to learn that and go, okay, I'm fine with us selling off this player. We're going to remember them. Maybe they loop back to us on the back end. And in the meantime, they show up in summers. They can show up at a camp or two. They can do something because our seasons run counter to the European leagues to just kind of still be a part of that community. It's like, hey, go play at Newcastle. Go play at Chelsea. Go play at Schalke. But if you're not busy in June, swing on by College Park. I want you to meet some kids. And we seem to have a hard time with that. We think that having $1 today is worth more than $10 tomorrow. And it's not. $10 is still $10. You see a Weston McKennie who just decided, I'm not going to sign the homegrown contract. Dallas got nothing for him. Nothing. You, instead of taking X amount of dollars in the short term and selling
and being ready when he was 18.
Being ready when he was 18
right.
To sell the player to Germany, make that money back and be able to start building a track record and the connections to sell the next player and let other players in your system know that, like, you see what Weston did, that could be you if you work hard like he did, if you do what we're asking you to. And Dallas has an amazing track record of developing kids. What are they getting for it? Some of that's by design. I mean, some players they want to keep, but otherwise, why would I sell a player for $5 million when I really only get $750,000 in usable money back for it?
With this last segue, I want to get into the crust of the conversation because I know that people listening to this will be wondering where it's coming, and it's going to come now. Let's go with this idea of Pulisic, right?
Yeah.
Croatian passport, left, an American who trained in Europe and is doing very well. Didn't get to go to the World Cup in Russia because of failure of American soccer. When we come back to this idea of safety nets, right? So I read Cameron's Players Tribune, right? And his discussion about how that event went down, the loss to Trinidad and Tobago, and how when Jurgen Klinsmann, even though he was unliked, was fired and was replaced by Bruce Arena, there was a shift in the mentality because it went from being everyone has to compete for their spot to relax, we've got this. When you are on the field training the day before your match, Josie Altidore's doing piggyback on somebody's back.
Yeah.
As you said, we what?
We lost that match before it was ever played. You can't insult somebody's home like that.
But it's still this idea of the safety net that we got cocky.
Yeah.
And there was no way to be complacent because it's not like if we would have lost that game, we still would have been through. We still had to get a point from that game. There is no reason we should be going into a World Cup qualifying game cocky.
Yeah, I mean, part of that, I think, is I do think Jeff is bad in his supposition that Jurgen was the answer. Because Jurgen really wasn't the answer in Germany.
No, he's not the answer, for sure.
I mean, he was a better answer than Bruce Arena, but he was...
But is Greg Berhalter the answer?
Oh, God, no. He's the answer to a trivia question of who was the American coach after Jay Sarachan. I mean, everybody knows Tata wanted that job. And did he want to be in Atlanta? No, his time had come and gone. I think we all come to terms. But he wanted that job. And then to have the audacity, the unmitigated gall to say, if you're in a coach rush, you have to move to Chicago. I'm sorry, unless you're Oprah, nobody's moving to Chicago for you. In the hierarchy of American cognoscentia and trust, I don't know where you put them, but it's not in, like, I wouldn't even ask for the moving allowance. It's like, I'm not going. Like, you don't run an organization that well when people are like, no. Like, how many of those jobs are there? Currently, there's 16 unoccupied, and nobody wants them. Everybody's like, ooh, yeah, I got a job over at Staples. I'm good. I'm just going to do this Uber in my part-time and make ends meet. They have to start with some humility and go, this is our place in life. This is where we are. Where do you live? Are you willing to at least move to LA, Atlanta, Kansas City, Chicago, New York? We can get you field time there, and we will get because all the kids don't live in Chicago, so why does the coach have to live there? What's happening in Chicago? Is there a secret coven underneath Soccer House where they put on robes and they all pray to Clint Dempsey? No, because they pray to Landon Donovan. There's a giant bronze Landon
Donovan statue. I've seen it.
So it starts with that, having some humility about who you are and what you have. And then you go to your best player, who is right now Kristen Pulisic, and say, hey, what do you want to see? You're not going to get everything, but you have to have a rapport with your best player and go, what do you see? What do
He is our future.
Yeah.
He is our future. And he understands that. He understands the weight of the team is on him.
Right.
But it's us as a nation and as a federation when it comes to the men's team. I mean, the women's is a different story.
Put a wall around the women, and no one is allowed to go anywhere near.
Don't come near them. Their goal, just don't touch. I mean, okay. But I'm going to stop myself because we're going to get to so many points. But the main thing, and this leads to, so we've built a very solid pyramid just stacking up to this pinnacle question.
Yeah.
Because it's a very important question. This is a question that needs to be answered.
Yeah.
But what is success? What would then be success for U.S. soccer? I mean, if we're starting, today is day 0.
Yeah.
What would be success for U.S. soccer? How would we succeed?
So you have to break it down into a couple things. One is financial success. As far as I know, they're not losing money. So, yay. They're not horrible at the money part.
They're hoarding money, though.
Yeah, I mean, they're hoarding it, but I mean, there's money in the bank, which money in the bank solves a lot of your problems. 2, cultural significance, which they are in the deficit. And 3, on the field play, which is at this point also a deficit approaching 0, but it's still a deficit.
Once again, when we're talking about play, though, we're talking about the men's team.
I'm talking men's team only.
Correct. Right. So it's this idea that the on-field play is better. Oh. There's a different coach provided, because I don't think Greg Berhalter is the way we're going or the way we need to go.
I'm going to say this. Greg Berhalter knows more about soccer than I will ever know. Greg Berhalter, I would never hire to work at a Denny's. At no point am I going to look at that man and go, that man's the answer.
He's got the answer. If we could change that, if we could change one small problem, because there are a multitude of problems, moving forward, going into 2022, like if I'm looking at you, if you're it, you have now become the U.S. men's national team coach.
Yes.
And also, coincidentally, also now the president of the U.S. Soccer Federation. If you're now Cordero and the U.S. men's national team coach, how do you solve this problem? If it was you, and with your history, your knowledge, and this is also going back to the NBA and understanding how everything works and how everything's a progression. I mean, the Soccer Federation is obviously different than MLS, but how do we solve the problem?
You solve it by instilling confidence in people. First thing I do is I fire myself as coach, because I have no business doing that job. But I back up a Brinks truck to the most competent, trust-inducing coach who's available. And I go, here's a Brinks truck. And I have a spare Brinks truck just in case that's not enough. And I would go, are you sure? I have Nike on deck, and I had them saying, hey, this Christian Pulisic kid, I need him in every single commercial. We're going to put it on every single station you can imagine. I need Adidas. I don't pull inside, go, hey, I know you don't do the national team kits, but you're wrapped up with MLS. We need better kits for them. Start with the aesthetic. Instill confidence in something that people are, oddly, I'm going to say this, proud to wear. And we need like an iconic jersey, like bring back the Where's Waldo and say, this is our.
I actually really love the Where's Waldo.
This is our home jersey. This is what we wear every cycle, no matter what.
I love the sash as well.
I just hate sashes. It's just a me thing.
I get that. Yeah. But the jersey itself, I loved.
Yeah. But start doing things that build up confidence, that make people want to wear it, be proud to wear it.
Right. It's about standing behind the crest, understanding the crest, and then also, in turn, because we're going 360, understanding the story. Yeah.
And understanding your players, and let your players sell the story. Let your other, like, the best thing to bring it weirdly full circle again is to look at Atlanta. The people who sell Atlanta United to other people are not the team. It's Atlanta United fans. That's what you want. You want people going, oh, you got a Pulisic jersey? Oh, I've got a Yetland jersey. You want those random interactions that are possible when you have these things, where you instill confidence.
Mouth to mouth, word to word, person to person.
Exactly. It's micro level marketing that starts with going, Nike, the last 10 kits have looked like garbage. Let's just make this easy for you. Here's our base. Go crazy with the other one. Leave it there.
It's telling the story. It's spreading the story, and it's making the product so good that they can't stop talking about you.
It's telling them, like, it's going in and say, I've got a great story, and then walking away and then going, well, no, I want to hear it. Make them follow you and go, oh, if you like this, just come over here. Oh, you like that? Come a little bit further. I mean, how many people have come to an Atlanta United game once and are like, oh, I'm in? Because they see it once. The game doesn't need any of our help. The game sells itself. We just do a horrific job. We do a great job in America of building walls around it, going, well, if you don't know this, well, if you don't have this money, oh, if you don't have that, you can't come in. It's like, no. Every empty stadium should be filled. Like, go find some school of kids somewhere and go like, hey, it's a Thursday night. We didn't sell out. We got 1,000 tickets. Westside Elementary, you're coming in. Bring your parents.
Right.
Like, we got buses. We got it taken care of. Free hot dogs. But instead we're like, we'd rather those empty seats in Red Bull Arena.
Spread the game.
Yeah.
So is that kind of where we're getting? I mean, like, as a simple answer to the question is just spread the game. I mean, there's a multitude of facets to that statement, but
it's not only spread the game. It's because it's spread your love of the game. Because if you start spreading the game, then you start getting into people talking about pro row. Like, you don't need to know pro rel to love the game. You can just come to the game and have a great time. You don't need to know every national team. You don't even know our men's. Like the women's, yes, you should know who they are. The men, they haven't earned it. But you should be able to say, like, hey, come look at these people. Come look at these men. Come look at these women. And people go, oh, I get it now. And they're like,
if somebody has love for the game, they're going to help somebody else have love for the game.
Right. Because
love shares love. Grow the game through the love of the game.
And more importantly, love is a positive thing. So if you're talking about how you love it, there's not going to be like I hate those people over there. Because it has nothing to do with why you love it.
Right.
That's why you banter. That's why you have a Reddit account. That's why you do those things. That's over there. But what is that thing that makes you remember that first game you went to? You went, holy shit, they do this for 90 minutes? They haven't sat down yet? How do they get to paint those giant things? They're singing these songs. Like, what is it that you love? And bring that. Because, quite frankly, no one cares about the other part. Yeah. Everybody's got their own problems. So, like, keep it down to that thing. Like, why any of us do this? Like, why you do a podcast? Why I'm president of supporters group? Like, nobody's getting paid. This is all for free because we love it. And that's what brings people to want to do it. Not, oh, you should see what I tweeted out today.
Right.
Like, no one cares.
So it's for the love of the game.
Hey, if you don't love it, it won't ever work.
Yeah.
I mean, to bring it back to the NBA, I mean, Michael Jordan, if he didn't have basketball, God knows what that man would have done. Because if he was an accountant, he would have destroyed somebody's taxes. By he's like, I work for the IRS. I'm auditing you. I'm Michael Jordan. We would be fearing him. Thank God he found that he loved. I mean,
right.
But people who love something so much it becomes a part of what they do and who they are. I mean, David Stern, who just passed away, he never played the game of the sport a day in his life, was probably the best commissioner in the history of American sports because he, in the end, loved the game. He was a hard ass when he needed to be, but he still loved the sport. And that helped him make those right and the tough choices. So if you don't love it and spread that thing, people are going to go, this is cynical. I don't really care. Oh, this is just another money grab. I have to spend how much on, none of us care about how much we spend on tickets. We're like, yes, take my money. We like, ooh, am I going to have ham sandwiches all week? Yes, because I love this team. I'm buying too many jerseys.
Right. So if you could make one last statement about American soccer, if we can wrap all of your feelings into one tiny, perfect sentence with a bow, what would it be?
Hire somebody who's been broke. Broke people make better decisions.
There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, Curtis Jenkins with Footie Mob. Thank you so much for joining me. Where can people find you? If they want to tweet you, if they want to go back and forth with you, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at KurtMcGirt1. Please bring me all your soccer and nerdy movie things.
Yes.
No DC Universe, though. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to us on our first home game against Sensi.
I'll bring the champagne.
Yes.
Have feelings about this episode? Thought you might. The conversation is a hot button topic with most lovers of the game, and I would love to hear from you. You can email me at kfinterviews@gmail.com or reach me on Twitter at @thekellyfrancis with all your takes from this episode. And I promise, next week I'm going to be getting into a much happier discussion as we welcome one of MLS's newest clubs to the show. Join me in my discussion with Men City, the supporter group for the new team in 2021, Charlotte, North Carolina. Until next week, friends.